This is Dunc and Holder on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Welcome back to Dunc and Holder. It's our classic of New Orleans, TPC, Louisiana. And will we all be after the round on Airline Drive? Saints draft, probably making a pick around 10-ish at number 27 overall. And I'm convinced if tight ends like former Saintsers Nate Lowry, maybe Ernie Conwell, Ronnie Gent, John Owens, Sean Fazende would draft all of them at the number 27 overall pick in this year's draft. He is Mr. Tight End. Sean, how are you today, my friend?
Man, what could you guys possibly want with me today, huh? Man, no luck
man,
to the tight end.
There ain't no y'all, bro. There ain't no y'all, bro. We're just sitting here to let you and Larry talk it out, and we're going to play traffic cop and watch
We're
you
not
guys.
talking it out. We tried to on their draft special, and no talking it
Things
out.
got a little feisty.
Let's talk about Bravo reality TV shows then. Let's go.
Oh, no, let's not do that. That's another show where we would all be in agreement, me and Sean Fazende. We'd head over back to Sir and go to Vanderpump Rules. But no, Sean, obviously today is a huge day, and everyone's going to have their opinions on where the Saints can go. And let's be frank, none of us really know because the board is going to dictate because they're at 27. And even if they trade up, the board's still going to dictate because you don't know who's going to be rising, falling, or whatnot.
True. And I think we got a little bit of our discussion got a little off track because my thoughts on a tight end is not to reach for a tight end. It's always been if that tight end is the highest graded, go with it. But, I just feel like the Saints, and Mickey Loomis said something interesting yesterday that, a player's fit within the system certainly factors into the evaluation and the ultimate draft grade. And I just think with really two tight ends, possibly three, you can visualize their fit within the system. And if they're somehow graded in that back end of the first round, then I say absolutely do it. I'm not saying reach for one just because you need one. I'm saying it's entirely possible there could be one best player available on their board. I know it's different than some of the experts' rankings of the tight ends, but I think in the Saints' case, you can clearly visualize what you could do with each one of these tight ends. So while we disagree, Larry, that's kind of where I stand. But I'm with you. It's always going to be best player available. They would never reach for a tight end unless there was some sort of tiebreaker and the tie would go to the need position, whatever that may be.
Look, I agree with you. If the best player on their board is a tight end or two, go for it. I think I'm just to the point where I've seen many very good all-pro tight ends be taken in day two, and but I understand where you're coming from. You're not talking about reaching. You just feel like, and might as well just tip your pick in your last mock draft. You feel like the best player that would fit would be a tight end.
Correct. Penn State's Mike Gesicki, and I switched players for my last two, but I stayed in the same position. What I liked about him was when I looked at his combine numbers, I went back and I checked his highlights because a lot of times you can coach the combine, right? To just excel at the combine. It doesn't really show up on the field, but it shows up with Gesicki and in particular his leaping ability. I mean, I saw the 41-inch vertical, so I went back and I watched how many times he has to go up and get the ball, and he does a lot, especially in the red zone. So that's why I ultimately went with him. Believe me, Larry, after our debate, I thought long and hard about switching it up, and I even said in the mock draft that I would absolutely go Josh Jackson if he were available at 27. I just don't see it happening, but if he is, by all means, grab him. But that's ultimately what I settled on, Mike Gesicki. And, look, it is what it is at this point. We're kind of mock draft out right now. I do three, and we'll see where it lands. I'm happy for the real thing tonight.
Hey, Sean, what do you make of Ian Rappaport's report today saying the Saints have made plenty of calls about making a big leap up from pick number 27? Could be due diligence in case a certain player, he speculates perhaps a quarterback, falls.
I think that's more what it is, kind of going through the scenarios of, okay, if player X falls, this is the package we can offer, team Y, that sort of thing. I don't know about you guys, though, but to move up to get a signal caller based on what they have available in terms of assets, in terms of draft picks, you look at other teams that theoretically could move up, like New England or Buffalo. They offer substantially more in terms of moving up. So my theory is, and look, this it could or could not happen. But if they were to move up, it wouldn't shock me at all. That move up would have to not only include future picks from next year, but also a player currently on their roster to go up, just because of the point. If you believe in the points charts, and if you believe in the idea of going up and to get a quarterback, it costs you even more. I think that's what would happen. But I think ultimately, you're talking about the Saints doing due diligence and trying to figure out all the scenarios they could come up with in case whatever player it may be slips and falls.
Sean Fazende, WVUE TV, Fox 8, joining us right here on Dunc and Holder. Sean, we've heard Sean Payton say multiple times this draft season that he doesn't completely trust the quarterback class. He says the one he would really like would be Sam Darnold. And now you're hearing some speculation around, maybe they are going to take a quarterback. And Jeff and I have kind of been under the assumption that we're trusting Sean and his word. But I'm curious to see what happens, honestly, because if that's the case. But Jeff and I also are in agreement that we don't think they'd be trading up to go get a quarterback. We think they would be trading up to go and get a pass rusher. That would be our thought, or maybe another position, not necessarily a quarterback.
It's certainly possible. I do think, though, if Peyton would have stopped his previous draft comments to MMQB at, I don't see an Andrew Luck or Carson Wentz in this draft class, period, I would have been absolutely. But when he added the only one of these guys going to be left standing in 5 years, I thought, man, that is a little bit over the top for him, especially since chances are you're going to play these guys at some point in your tenure with the Saints if you don't draft one. So I think he was – I kind of feel like it was him playing mind games a little bit and just trying to, I don't think it was him trying to, get one to slip, but maybe get some teams at the top to maybe rethink or just kind of, put a thought in their mind, so to speak. But ultimately, I think it's going to be tough for them to go up and get a quarterback, but it's certainly possible. But if they do go up and a player like, say, Chubb slips or Marcus Davenport, whatever the case may be, I could certainly see a scenario where they go up and get a player like that as well.
Yeah, it would surprise me, to be honest with you, just because I just feel like you got Breeze on board now for at least 2 more years, probably, the way he's playing. You've got your veteran backup in Tom Savage, who's won games in the NFL, and from everything we've heard, Peyton loves Taysom Hill as their developmental guy. I don't know why they would – look, I know you always need quarterbacks, but you're getting into maybe you would only be drafting a guy to eventually trade him down the road as a trade asset. I don't know what the value would be unless you have a doubt about Taysom Hill. And from everything I've heard, Sean Payton loves Taysom Hill, loves him. So I don't know why they would use a first-round pick or trade up and trade other picks to get a quarterback. It makes no sense to me. But, look, I've been wrong before. The Saints have done a lot of crazy things over the years in the first round of the draft.
Well, and look, had they not contemplated and been very open about their desire for Patrick Mahomes last year, I would say, I agree with you. But when they've gone on record as saying they would have gotten one last year, and I mean, if they felt like they needed one last year, certainly you can make the case that Breeze is a year older. They could at least see what's out there this year. I don't see it happening. I don't see them getting a quarterback, but I could certainly understand why they would look at this class thoroughly, because it is a pretty deep class regardless of how top heavy you think it might be. I mean, the chances of 6, it's probably going to be 5, but the possibility of 6 quarterbacks going in the first round, I mean, if you're an NFL team, especially an offensive NFL team like Sean Payton and the Saints, I mean, you'd be foolish not at least check and see what's out there. So, look, all things being considered, I don't think it's going to happen, but it still has to be considered at some point that they should one slip. Now, I think it would have to be kind of one of those meteoric falls where one slips to maybe 8 or 9. But that's the intrigue of the draft, and that's why, I mean, the buildup is so big. By the time you get to today, it's just like, what is going to happen? Because there's so many different storylines out there.
Sean, one more and we'll let you run. Is there a wild card pick or, say, position that you feel like the Saints might target at 27?
Other than tight end?
Other than tight end.
I like it.
No, I think I could see an offensive lineman. I really could. You, Juan, and myself kind of chatted about this. If an offensive lineman were to slip like last year with Ramczyk, I could see that happening because I think you have a good starting five in your offensive line, but you could certainly use an heir apparent to a guy like Max Unger. I know you mentioned the Arkansas guy, was it Ragno or something like that? I see a guy like Iowa's James Daniels. I know this. The Saints worked out personally 3 different Iowa prospects, and which I know makes Mike Triplett happy. But I think so. Certainly, they've focused on some Iowa products as well. So if any one of those guys could slip, I could certainly see the Saints pulling the trigger on those guys and bringing them in and just kind of see where it goes.
Yeah, I think an offensive lineman would make a lot of sense at the end of the first round, like Will Hernandez. I know they like him. These guys, you're probably going to have a very low bust rate by taking one of those guys. The worst you're going to do is have a guy that's probably going to be on your team for the next 5 or 6 years and could eventually move into a starting position. And I don't think you can ever go wrong taking somebody like that, especially for the value, because you don't see a lot of these big offensive linemen in this draft going up in the top 10. Maybe Quentin. It looks like Quentin Nelson will probably go. Maybe Mike McGlinchey. But for the most part, these offensive linemen I think will be great value at 27 if they get there.
And as we saw last year, you don't know when a need becomes a need. I mean, Ramczyk was not an immediate need, and then, boy, thank God they drafted him instead of Reuben Foster. So I just think, that's why they go best player available, is because you just don't know when you're going to need them. And at worst-case scenario, you draft one, he's your 6th offensive lineman that could come in a pinch whenever you need him. And as we saw last year, they needed a lot of them. You needed that 6th offensive lineman a lot. I saw Sean Payton say that Senio Kelemete played over 60% of the snaps last year. This goes to show you how important depth is along that offensive line.
Absolutely. Without Ryan Ramczyk last year, they would have been toast. Sean Fazende, WBUE, TV Fox 8. If they take a tight end, I'm just going to have to just bow down and say you were right. But if they don't, I'll be humble about it, I promise.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Count on that.
I'll hold you to that.
You will never hear the end of it ever again.
Right.
I won't go Fletcher Mackel and jump on Twitter and be like, "See, I told you so. I told you so." Hey, Sean, great stuff as always, buddy. See you later.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean.
All right, that's Sean Fazende. Sean Fazende does a great job, does his homework, so that's why I can needle him about his picks. But no, hey, look, anything there, you could argue many positions would make sense depending on where they pick in the first round. If they move up, they move down, whatever. So, all right, we're going to continue the draft conversation here on the shows. We're live, Zurich Classic of New Orleans, CPC, Louisiana. Round 1 is heading on the way. You're going to have the second wave of tee times cranking up here in about a half hour. So get on out here. Day is gorgeous, and we will finish the show, last 2 segments, talking all things Saints, all things NFL draft. So come on back. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. Dunc and Holder.